All right, check, check. Happy Sunday, everyone. I hope you guys are having a good weekend. Thanks for joining. This is Sound Engraver, of course. And yeah, good to have you all. We're going to be talking about art, really just in general, just making art, not really art itself, but kind of the process of art making. I think it is very important to discuss. Thanks for waiting for a few minutes. Believe it or not, I was getting ready. But first of all, I got to check if the audio is good. And I have a good reason for that. The reason is I did some major audio reconfiguring over the last few days because of some troubleshooting I was doing for OBS. I think I said troubleshoot. But let's go ahead. Yep, of course, my channel member, my one and only channel member, but also the first channel member says my wonderful husband says audio sounds great, good. And of course, that was Sun Kissed, my original track. That actually was really my first track of my first album that I went ahead and released back in 2019. I've got to release more music. But in any case, let us take that banner down. Always visit if you want my original music, whether to stream like full, if you want to hear the whole music, that is up for streaming on my website for free. But also, if you wanted to purchase it with some cover art, you can also get that at soundengraver.com. It will always be cheaper than iTunes, Apple Music, and all of that. But you can get it there too. I just would promise you that my website gives you the best price for high quality, the highest quality audio track. So anyway, let me go ahead and hide this banner. And let's go ahead and talk. Let's talk to each other. Let's do that. This is a totally impromptu stream. I just had a thought, and I thought, well, I'll just stream that thought. So it really will be a stream of consciousness. So let's go ahead and see who is in the chat. Of course, my first member, and also just first in my heart, is Professor Geek saying, "Ready for your wisdom, Mrs. Geek." Yes, I am Mrs. Geek. It's wonderful. And thank you all so much for your support when I was posting on the community tab one of the wedding pics. That's the only one I'll post. I really liked it the most because of the colors. But yeah, it's a wonderful pic, and thank you all so much for your love and support for that happy time. And Ghost Planet is in. Welcome. Thank you for coming. Big Al Present says, wishes me a great stream. Hope Merry Life is agreeing with you. Yes, yes. A little bit. Our first 2 weeks together, we actually didn't have hot water. So I mean, I think we're fine now. And we have hot water now, but we were just kind of going through it. Like, we know something like that is only temporary. We have relatives like 10 minutes away, to wash up and stuff like that. So it was good. It wasn't all bad. It was fine. Stunning and Brave Megatron is in. Welcome. And Parker M, have not seen you. Welcome. Glad to have you in the chat. Final Fantasy fan, always good to see you. And Brian Gilmartin, the same. Megatron says that you're listening to classy music. Thank you for calling my music classy. Thank you. While you're drawing a bloodthirsty T-Rex. That's pretty funny. That's a juxtaposition, right? And then, hello. Okay, so I want to know how to pronounce your name because I've seen you in my comments. Is there a name I can call you by? NXZW? Like, there's got to be a way I can address you besides saying the whole, those 4 letters. But if you just prefer N or W or all of it, just let me know. But good to have you. And then we also have another channel member, Daniel Heron, my friend. And also thank you so much for the super chat. What up, awesome people, and Professor Geek. I love that he says Professor Geek on my channel, but that's okay because like we're pretty much the same person now, like spiritually, theologically, biblically. So it is all good. All right, continuing on. Oh, Exploring Fiction, welcome. Glad to have you back. Seen you twice now, so it's good. No, yeah, Daniel Heron fighting. No. I'm a channel member. Yeah, I wish the stars were, the star colors were available in the chat, but oh well. But thank you always, Daniel, for being, you are my friend, Birdman, channel member or not, but thank you always for your support. Who am I missing? Let's see. Oh, Gigawatt. My third channel member, thank you for coming too. Awesome, awesome to have you. So, yeah, so Brian, we do have hot water now. In fact, actually, not only that, we have a new faucet for our sink because the older faucet was fine. It just wasn't giving it enough pressure. And I love dishes. I love doing dishes. I don't know why. I prefer hand washing our dishes to having it, having a dishwasher. I haven't had a dishwasher in years, really, like probably a good 20 years. So now we have awesome water pressure and it's hot. And there's just something so satisfying by hand washing dishes under steaming hot water with awesome pressure. It's wonderful. It is wonderful. And as Prof says, he is very done taking ice baths because he was doing that for I don't think it was 2 weeks, but it felt like 2 weeks. I think it was like a week and a half. So yeah, so I wanted to talk about making art really, just something I think of from time to time, and then also that I've heard, on the grapevine, so to speak, even though that's not really a good way of using that phrase. It was more like things I've seen in, on the online discourse, especially with talking about things like AI art and, artists talking amongst themselves, but then also people who don't feel like they can make the cut as artists also talking amongst themselves. And also me as a teacher, I probably was thinking more about this topic because of a lesson I had recently this week. And so I see it all the time with this sentiment, with this idea that I'm going to share with you guys on the stream, and that is the struggle that comes with making art. Now, before I get into my thoughts, this is not to support the idea of the starving artist. Also, this is not in any way to support the martyr. Like a lot of artists, especially it's more of a classical idea, of the like late 1800s, early 1900s, especially in the First World War. This kind of idea, like it was seen in black and white films too, like the artist who is not getting a break monetarily speaking, maybe not getting commission, maybe not getting some patronage, and so they're suicidal or something like that, or they're drinking themselves into oblivion and stuff like that. So I'm anything I say about this stream is not to say that I support the idea of the tortured artist, if that makes sense. I'm a pretty optimistic human being. I don't see myself as cynical. Maybe that's debatable depending on who you are and how you listen to me. But I would say that it's just something I want to be real with people when it comes to making art. And a lot of you guys in the chat do make art, whatever level you are, whatever stage you're at, and your expertise and your speciality. But anyway, I wanted to talk about this now seemingly offensive idea that you must struggle with your art. Now, I'm of the belief that you should struggle with your art. And there are reasons for that, but maybe before I begin, saying my thoughts in this impromptu, I wanted to share just a quick personal experience with one of my students that I had this week. He's this, I think he's 8 or 9 years old. He's a fourth grader, and he's a new student, and he's great. Yeah, he's actually a very bright kid, kind of a class clown, even with just me. So I could tell, if he's in the public school system, if he's not homeschooled, I could guarantee he is a class clown, and he's very bright. He's a little mathematician, if you will. His favorite subject is math, so obviously he's a very smart kid. And he's also very bright when it comes to music sensibilities. He has to a fault even, he has this great nature, this great inclination to pick up things by ear. So when I say pick up things by ear, he has a good inner ear. He knows what a melody sounds like. And if he learns it, if he knows the order of the finger placement on the violin, he'll play the song. And he's discovered this about himself with the violin. Now, he's played piano. He's pretty good at piano already. So he's learning violin for the first time. And he was picking up Ode to Joy by Beethoven, a very famous melody, perfect for the holidays and all of that. And he picked up this melody by ear with the finger placement. We were doing more of like a kind of a copycat thing where I would do a little gesture, a little bit of like a 2-bar phrase or a 4-bar phrase. And then he would hear it and then try to play it on the violin with it. his fingers, and he loves doing it on D string versus A string, E string. He can't really do it on G string where he is, but in any case, he really loves playing Ode to Joy on D string. Now, that's all well and good, but he has this bad habit. I have to kind of discipline him in a loving way, in an encouraging way, but I kind of have to get on it for him not to constantly be playing Beethoven Ode to Joy for a couple of reasons. The first main reason is as well as he can play the melody and get some sort of sound on the violin, his left hand is not good. He has a very poorly constructed left hand that I have to shape as a sculptor, very much like a violin is a very particularly physical instrument, and you have to have the left hand in a certain way. And if you don't have it a certain way, you're going to pick up really bad habits that not only look atrocious, but can actually be physically detrimental. It's actually a health issue. Like you can actually severely injure your hand over time if you do not have a proper left hand technique. And so while he can play Beethoven's Ode to Joy, he actually has it. His left hand is shaped in such a way where I can already see the potential injury to his hand and already see that he will not be able to play any music in the future with that technique without a lot of strain, a lot of pain, and a lot of difficulty. Now, he doesn't see that. He hears Ode to Joy, he thinks it's fine. And actually, the tone is a little bit off. I'll say it's a very scratchy tone. He thinks it's fine though because he hears the notes. So in his mind, he's like, "No, I'm playing the notes," but he's not seeing that his tone isn't as good as it should be, and he's not playing with the right nimbleness and flexibility he should play for that melody as well as faster music in the future. To his mind, he's 9 years old, but he's also a beginner. It doesn't really matter the age. He's hearing like, no, I play it fine. Like I don't need improvement. And so I tell him, I say, listen, yes, we can play Ode to Joy, but I need you to do it this way. And I'll give him one piece of instruction. And then sometimes he'll do it, but he's like, when he finishes the melody, he's like, it's so hard that way. It's so hard. I'm like, this is the right way to do it. He's like, yeah, but it's hard. I said, it's hard now because you're not used to it. You're not used to the correct position with your hand. And he kind of sulks at this. He's like, I don't want to do it this way. I want to do it the way I've been doing it. I was like, I know, but you won't be able to play effectively and you won't be able to play a lot of good music in the future if you keep doing it the way you're doing. So that's the first thing. The second thing is he hates learning on the first try. And here's what I mean. He didn't care to learn Beethoven when he was just starting, but he took some time every day in the week to practice. And then once he learned Beethoven, he was super satisfied. It was like so gratifying, and he was happy with himself. And he should be. He should be proud of himself for being able to play Ode to Joy. But when he is at the very first stage of reading the music and playing through the music for the first time, he hates it. And there were a couple things that I had noticed. One, he thinks he sounds awful when he's reading something for the first time, even though his tone is still the same as the tone he plays Beethoven's Ode to Joy. He just doesn't like the concept of trying a new thing he's not used to. So he thinks the tone sounds worse because of that. The second thing is there are times when he reads through something, he goes through it. I get on it. I said, listen, go all the way to the end of these 8 bars. You can do it. I know you can. And he can, and he doesn't hear it. There was one time he actually sounded really good and he played with very nice technique, and he didn't see it and he didn't hear it because it was all a first experience for him. It was a first try, and it was outside his comfort zone. He was very uncomfortable. And so because he wasn't used to it, he thought he sounded bad, or he thought he felt he looked bad, which is a very interesting idea to think about. I'm like, well, no, you actually sounded, listen, you looked great. You looked and sounded great. He's like, I hate this. And so he's kind of an example of many people, including myself, and he's a child, so it's very different as you mature into an adult and young adult, and even whether you're in your 40s, 50s, or 60s. I think it's just human nature for us to not like the place we're in when we're trying it out first, or when we're at the beginning stages and we know we need improvement and we know we need to practice. And even if we're at that intermediate stage where we're past the beginning stage, there are these things that we have to do to get better with our art. And that's where I'm leaning towards this idea that the struggle is real. Like you will undoubtedly have struggle with your craftsmanship, with your artistic endeavor and experience, no matter how talented you are. So with the case with the student, he's absolutely bright and hands down, he could probably do everything I say and apply every single bit of instruction I ask of him for that week because I know intellectually and even mechanically he can do it. It's just his attitude and his mindset saying, well, this is hard, so therefore I sound bad. And I think even though that's from a child's perspective, I think we can actually run with that with our own perspective, saying, well, I don't want this to be so hard. I want art to be 100% all the time gratifying. Now, this is not to remove any good natural ecstasy that comes from producing at least a solid piece of art. Maybe not even completely. Maybe you're in the beginning preliminary stage, sketching out something before finally like finishing that rendering in whatever art form you are in. I'm the same exact way with my music, and in the same exact way with practicing the violin. And I sort of lost my train of thought here. We were talking about what were we talking about? We are talking about kind of trying to overcome our discomfort in the tasks we have to do in order to get better. So let's go ahead and I'm going to grab a swig of water and maybe go into the chat until I get my thoughts, because I think I had an idea and it'll come back to me, I know, but let's see what y'all are saying. All right. Private Eye, welcome. You say I'm a dub actor. It's hard, but I love it. Yeah. So the idea of it being work, it being a kind of toiling, a kind of really something that takes time, attention to detail, and dedication. And there are things in your schedule that you don't want to do. Like there are things in your artistic, maybe that's where I was going with this. There are things in your artistic process, they're not equally joyous to undertake. Like there are things that I always would prefer more as a composer than things I have to get done in order to get that piece released or at the very least mixed and mastered and stuff like that. And it's in some ways it's not fun. In some ways it's like it's tedious. It's like, oh man, I don't want to do this. I'd rather work on something else. And that is something that artists, I think more of the artists who have done it over the years have this understanding. Actually, let me bring up this point before I get back into the chat, because it's a rather important point in your artistic process. There's this, and I've talked about it before on my stream. There's this. It kind of stopped with the pandemic. It was huge in the early aughts in the 2010s, and then it killed instantly during the pandemic, when people were kind of conserving and reserving and stuff like that. And then it's starting to flood again. I knew it was going to happen, but this kind of I've been keeping tabs a little bit, not really as an active listener, but kind of just keeping my feelers out there for this movement that has long been what I call the entrepreneurial motivational movement. And a lot of people write books, a lot of these influencers, and I guess influencer is getting to be an outdated term now, but honestly, I'm just going to still use it. And if it has some sort of stigma, it's deserved. But these influencers who are in the entrepreneurial sphere, whether it's with business, marketing, or um, sports or art or whatever like that, education, content creation, whatever the case is, a lot of people will really make their money on two topics. Like people say, oh yeah, he's written like 12 books, or he's still writing books, he's still like making so much money on these books. I was like, well, it makes sense because his books are on this topic. The topic is Well, I just forgot one of them, but one of them is mindset, like positivity and having a good personal mindset for your businesses. And a lot of what people say in these books, I don't read these books, but I've over the years heard people discuss what they write. They talk about having the right mindset, and the folly of this sentiment really comes down to one thing: is like people say you gotta have the right mindset, and that right mindset is being motivated. You gotta find motivation. You gotta be inspired. And yeah, you need to absolutely. I'm gonna say I'll agree. You do need to be inspired, but you cannot, as an artist or anyone for that matter, whatever vocation, you cannot wait for motivation to do your tasks. The nice thing about discipline is once you have the discipline, it's actually habit. So you would actually do it. Your mind and your heart and your routine, just everything is built in where you would actually do a task whether you want to or not. So that actually is a very important thing, an advantage that you have as an artist who is disciplined to work on stuff you'd otherwise not to work want to work on, and and less the situation of your art process is the same. Like it's still kind of that struggle, it's that endurance that you're like, okay, got to get this done. I got to get better. I got to practice and all that. But the struggle gets less and less because now you're more immune to it. That's kind of where I'm going with this stream. The struggle is important and it won't change, but your immunity toward it will change the more disciplined you are. That's kind of what I wanted to say before getting into the chat. And then we'll probably talk about it at length with your guys' comments because I have more to say, but again, this is an impromptu, so we'll see what you guys are all saying. All right. So let's see. Who is next? Yeah, Megatron says, I was about to say stunning builds character. No, struggle builds character. Struggle builds character, and it's not just a physical muscle, and like in the way of exercise, it's actually a mental and emotional muscle that you build, where you're not even thinking about the struggle as someone who would perceive it and experience it at the very beginning stage of it, if that makes sense. But struggle is important. The other thing about struggle, and I think a lot of people, well, let me just say this. The thing with struggle, why it's so important, especially for artists, but athletes too, anyone that has a talent to do something, is struggle really humbles you as a person. The more you work hard and the more you struggle with your craft, the more you have an understanding of yourself, like saying, okay, well, I might be talented in this area, but there are a lot of factors that go in outside of talent that gets me to where I need to be or where I am professionally. A lot of people, I don't run into this myself as a violinist, but a lot of people, kind of react to me in a favorable way. They say, "Wow, like you play violin well," or "Wow, that sounded really nice. That sounded really pretty." And I don't want to like disregard that in any way, but it's also a very natural thing for me. It's like, well, and I say it's natural for me because I've been doing it for 27 years. 28 years this September. This kind of, well, we're November, so 28 years next year. So like people say, "Wow, how'd you do this?" Like, well, I've been doing it for many, many hours and many, many years. But that's kind of the thing where I did not play as naturally as violin as I naturally play it now. A lot of my beginner students, they hate holding the bow at first. It takes a good 3, 4 weeks, maybe even a couple of months before, like, and they have to practice every day. They have to practice the bow hold every day because the bow hold for me is absolutely natural. I'll pick it up and I have it. But for a lot of people, especially my adult students, I've had my adult students even argue with me saying, "That's not natural. That can't be right because it doesn't feel natural." I'm like, it is right. You're just not used to it. And yes, trust me on this. Trust me on this. And I've had students think that they don't believe me because of how unnatural it feels. But the struggle you'll really perceive the struggle at first, and then you'll still have levels of struggle, but the more you work at it And the longer you work at it, the struggle is going to be something you're more or less immune to, which actually I think is a very encouraging thing. That's what discipline is. Yeah, you could be motivated, but you can't wait for motivation to do the task. Motivation will come and go. Motivation is ephemeral. There are some days where I'm so inspired, just hugely inspired by things, especially with music. And then there are some times where it's just a task like doing the dishes or doing the laundry is. So I think artists need to be a little bit mindful of that. Private Eye says, I think you mean the Van Gogh syndrome. And I think you mean the martyr, right? Like I'm a tortured artist. Yeah. And I don't think I have more highs than lows as I get into my craft, and honestly, way more highs after after 8 years of doing it and after 20 years of doing violin, so 8 years of doing composition and 20 years of doing violin and maybe 4 or 5 years doing SuperCollider, even though that's kind of a that kind of can bring me down sometimes with troubleshooting. But I I think as people progress in their craft, there are a lot more highs than lows. Now with the tortured artist, I think a lot of people are more tortured. Like I think that stereotype comes from artists kind of being cynical about not making money off of their art. I do not expect to make a lot of money in my lifetime as an artist. I mean, my bread. Well, of course, I'm married now and to another to my breadwinner, Professor Geek. But my income has pretty much solely been off of teaching because the demand is there. Teaching, there will always be a demand for teaching, like whatever subject, which is great. I think it's great. But and as with Professor, Geek, Professor Geek, his role as a professor that will always be on demand. Like that will never go away. I mean, unless there was some catastrophe in civilization, but the role of the teacher will always be on demand, way more than the role of the artist. And the question is, if, like, I think I've always reconciled that idea, like, I'll release my music out there, I'll write my fiction, and I'll publish my fiction, but I won't expect income like I can make out of, teaching the violin or piano or whatever. So, and I don't know, I love the role as a teacher. I didn't really appreciate it until like 2 years ago. I've taught for 8 years, by the way. I didn't really appreciate it until like 2 years ago when my students started sticking around. And the more they stick around, the more I want to, do the extra, go the extra mile for them. So, um, Speed Racer says, not gonna lie, nobody likes struggle, but achievements mean nothing without it. Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of the reason why I was thinking about the struggle. Yeah. With my student that I told you about, but also I had seen a lot of resentment against artists when it came to the AI discussion. Like people were really complaining about artists being so angry and so resentful. It's like, well, first of all, there's nothing wrong with being upset about something. That's the first thing. The second thing is artists who have been in the profession, even if they don't make money, but I'm talking about artists doing things on a professional level. They understandably think something like AI is a cheat because you're not developing your own voice and your own signature with something and relying on a machine to generate it for you. And I'm not saying AI music, well, I was thinking music, but I'm not saying AI art is easy, but it's not an artistic skill. People need to understand that. Okay, I'm gonna go on maybe the shortest rant ever because I can't think of too much. But people need to see that AI art is generative, meaning it's machine made, meaning you didn't make the composition. It does the work for you. You modify it, and that's a skill. It's a technical skill, but it's not an artistic skill. I just want to say that. All right. I do see super chat. Thank you. Studio Super. Wonderful. Let me put this up. I don't know where you are. Let me bring this up. Thank you. Listening to OSTs inspires me. Yeah, exactly. John Williams. Oh, Birdman. I'm sorry. I always pronounce his name wrong. Michael, I know who he is. Michael Giacchino, I always mispronounce his last name. I know who he is though. Are some of my favorites. You can correct me in the chat, Daniel. I think it's a crime. Giacchino. I feel like I'm saying his name wrong. Uh, Never scored for a James Bond film, especially after his incredible score. Oh, interesting. And I'll say this to Prof. Need like he wants me, and I get it. Like that's a movie we have to see together because I know this is a real. I'm 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 being real with y'all. I have never seen The Incredibles. Like people might think, what? And then it is, as far as animation goes, it's like, is it animation? It's like the top five of Professor Geek's favorite animation film, hero films. And I think animation, but maybe even animation and live action. But I think he was going to do a video on that or something like that. But he like The Incredibles is like one of his top favorite films ever. So, well, thank you for the super chat. Yeah, yeah, listening to the originals. Okay, that's the thing is like I love that you said it inspires you. I think artists, even in the nitty gritty of their work, will always be inspired. I always find inspiration. There's not a day that goes by where I'm inspired by the smallest thought or like a newly released album or an EP or a single track or even something like a media piece of media I don't really follow, at least on the contemporary front, is independent comics. Like I'm so inspired by Eric July's success in with what he's doing with the Rippaverse. It may be something I look into in the future. I'm not sure, but at the very least, I love seeing people be very professional and very serious about their campaigns. Like RJ from the Fourth Age, it's not like he writes in a genre that I just otherwise would not be inclined to reading. But the fact that he's a friend of this channel, but he also is just really inspiring to just get stuff out there and be very prompt about it and very professional about it. But whether it's what people are doing in the indie comic sphere or animation or just independent artists anyway, it's hugely inspiring. And by indie artists, I mean just anyone who's not really working under another publisher or label. All right. So Samuel Proctor's in. Brian Gilmartin says, the idea of an artist as a martyr sounds like it fit right in with the modern media, considering how many creatives often go to war with audiences over certain issues on social media. Yeah, and who said it? Oh my gosh, who said it? I can't remember if it was Professor Geek, my husband, or someone else. You're gonna have to correct me if you can, Professor. Oh no. Actually, no. I think it was a YouTuber who is an artist that I had never followed, but I was trying to hear his commentary on AI art, and he's absolutely right. And this is such a hard truth for so many people, especially those who are trying to do AI art. People can be creative, but not an artist. Meaning artist is actually working to develop something like some finished product or at least some improved artistic skill. And when you say creatives, and you say creatives in quotes, kind of meaning like they're not creatives anyway, over in Hollywood and stuff like that. But you are also, I also want to make the distinction that creatives, you could be creative as a person, but to actually apply it as a skill and even have it as a professional goal, that's what distinguishes artist from creative. An artist is a creative, but a creative by themselves is not an artist until the job is done. All right, moving on. Oh, Sam Proctor, the ice bath. We had no hot water for a couple of weeks, so that's why. So Prof would just, yeah. Well, never mind. Oh, I was trying to say something. I'm like, I don't think people need to know that. But I see my halo get really wide, so hopefully I'm not too loud. I think the levels are fine. Yeah. You guys can hear me all right, right? It might be even a little lower than normal, but I'm just gonna leave it as is. All right. Megatron says he has not. Oh, by the way, are you he or she? I don't know because I want to be careful with that. You don't have to confirm if you don't want to, but like I Megatron, I don't know. We'll see. But you are an artist. You say you haven't drawn a T Rex since kindergarten. That's cool. So yeah, something new. Definitely something new. All right. Aloise, welcome. You say yesterday was your birthday. Awesome. Well, happy birthday. Does it I'm just curious if Veterans Day overshadows your birthday or is it more just like a thing you just celebrate when you can? I'm right before St. Patrick's Day. And I lived in Wisconsin for 2 years, and St. Patrick's Day is, well, at least in my experience, it could have changed in recent times, but St. Patrick's Day in Wisconsin is pretty much like Christmas for some. It is a thing. And I remember going out with friends in college, and when they found out, and we were all just going, and when they found out it was my birthday that night, like I had so many, oh, we gotta have the boot, gotta drink out of the boot, and I fortunately was not that. I wasn't hammered. My roommate was hammered. I was the designated walker because it was so like thank goodness it was still so cold in Wisconsin that day. Because I had to like kind of hold her arm to steady her because there was like traffic and stuff. But anyway, like so my birthday doesn't fall right on a holiday. Um, but I know some people might have that to be a kind of a nuisance. Brian uh, says, while we're on the subject of struggle, I'm currently working on a portrait of one of my newer characters where I'm struggling with the perspective. You say I'm trying to show her in a study where she's sitting, reading a book cross-legged, and I'm still trying to figure out how to make sure everything is where it needs to be. Now, I couldn't give you any input, Brian, unfortunately, because I am not a visual artist. But the fact that you're working with something you're not quite used to or haven't done before, or at least done with that character, is it's those it's those things you have to apply and kind of have to work at it, even if it's very messy. I work with. I need to start doing this a little bit better. I've just been so busy with the wedding, but I have some very hard violin pieces I would really like to master. I have them. I have the scores, sitting on a bookshelf in the next room, and I've never mastered those pieces. And I need to get back on it. And there are some things in those pieces I can play pretty effortlessly. And then there are some pieces where I'm like, oh my goodness. And it's those parts where I need to actually spend like 80% of the time. I know this is kind of an entrepreneur thing, like, you spend 80% of the time on the hard stuff and 20% of the time on the stuff you already know or the easier stuff. I actually ask my students to do that. So if they're practicing for 30 minutes, 24 of those minutes need to be directed to something, to a technique, to a piece of music they don't feel comfortable playing on. And I apply that same thing for myself. Like I'm like, okay, I hate working at this really difficult passage, but I know I have to get better and then to be able to master this music. Yeah. All right. Moving on down. Exploring Fiction says, when I'm struggling with my writing, I sometimes cut down on my daily word count of my creative projects and focus more on my video scripts since they combine prose and information. It has helped a lot. I think that's a good idea. This is a good point you bring up where you're lessening, how do I put it? You don't want to be stuck in like this monotony of of these details of whatever you're working on. And so what I think you're right. What I like to do is balance my time. Like let's say I have like an hour allotted to my composition and I'll spend a lot of time just getting more down on the page or on the DAW in my case. But then like 15 minutes out of that hour, I will either work on another piece or work on something I more or less enjoy about the composition process to just kind of even it out. Yeah. And so I think cutting down your word count for writing is a very good task. I think that's a good task to balance with the other harder stuff. Yeah, that's a good idea. Good job. Let's see. Let's see. Megatron says, "Yep, the time consuming part of art is the thought process of figuring out how the pose or the layout of the drawing is at least for you." Yeah. Uh, Samuel Proctor says, "I was working with horses a year ago when I started, and when I started, I sucked. It took me around 4 months for me to be able to handle them without a more experienced person. But after that, uh, I became one of the newbies." Um, oh, you came to help out the people who are starting. Yeah, it's very satisfying once you do it yourself. There's a great deal of edification and self-esteem involved when you finally overcome something. Like you always know you could get better. It's never going to be a perfect thing for you. You always strive to perfection of a thing, but you know where you improve. That's the thing. That is the thing I don't think a lot of my violin students understand, only because they've been with violin not for not many years like me, right? They don't understand that it's gonna take time to get to where you want to be, but then even when you know you can improve, you know exactly where you can improve. That's actually a really good spot to be. That way, you have a really good ability to self-assess. It's like you can almost write out your own criteria of stuff to work on, and I think that's really important. Thank you. Thank you. Big Al says sound is fine. Good. Yeah, the halo looks really wide. So Studio Super again for another super chat. Appreciate you, man. In my opinion, people that do AI aren't artists, but rather commissioners. Yes, yes, very good way of putting it. The machine is the artist. The machine is absolutely the artist. They just touch up the works and they have commissioned. Absolutely true. Um, yeah, I've heard the word commissioner be a comparable term. I've also heard the position of art director. So, like for things like museums, exhibitions, operas, Broadway shows. Well, maybe not Broadway shows, but there are multimedia projects out there that require a professional art director, and that's the overseer of the whole thing. And even though that's not an artistic skill, well, okay, first of all, I want to backtrack. It's not an artistic skill in the way of being a sculptor is an artistic skill, but it to be an art director, you do have artistic sensibilities, no question. But your talent as an art director is to command what needs to be done because you are a visionary. And it's important. I would say it's important to have some vision or to even be a visionary to be an artist for what you want to do for your own personal goals. But I am not a visionary myself as people who are paid directors, like who are music directors, who are art directors, who can oversee a slew of projects and pretty much work with the collaborations pretty effectively. I can't do that. That is not my talent, and that's not where I've homed in on my skill. And people who might naturally be artists, who work in AI, who probably already have an eye for these things, might mistake that and say, "Well, I already know what it's supposed to look like. I just modify it to my own personal preference, and so I am being an artist that way." No, 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 no. You make the composition. You make the composition. Then you modify your own composition. That's how art works, and it's not a comfortable idea for a lot of people. Like, one of the hardest things about composing music, at least for me, this is not for everyone. Maybe it's easier for some composers, but my biggest task when I first write out a piece of music is finishing the structure. And I mean the structure of the whole thing. So if it's a 7-minute piece of music, I have the structure all the way down from 0 seconds all the way to the end of 7 minutes. That's what I mean by structure, and that takes the longest time. Then when I start colorizing and then modifying the instruments to my taste, I do not select my final draft instruments. Like I have some pieces that are structurally done that's not the end result as far as the instrumentation, that the instrumentation comes next. It's like you sketch it out, you compose it, and for you visual artists, that's sketching it out the way you guys do it, and then you modify. But if you don't start, like if you don't create something out of nothing, or how did someone put it? Like if you don't, like let's say digital art, like if you don't construct and create something out of that cube or out of that blob, you're not an artist. If the cube, if there was no cube, if there was no blob, if there's no shape that to be shaped, if you like that's if it's a person, like if you generate an image of a person, or like a fantasy creature, like a fairy or a dragon or whatever, it's like, but you didn't compose that? No, that's the machine. The machine did that. You're going to be the art director or the commissioner for that machine, and the machine is going to be your artist. Okay, studying and praying. Megatron says, "I'm a dude." All right, nice. All right, so let's see. Samuel Proctor, and I'm sure Prof can confirm what you say, Samuel. And that is The Incredibles is a masterpiece, and also your childhood. Yeah, Incredibles came. Oh my gosh, I was just finishing high school, I think. So I would be watching Pixar. I remember watching Toy Story and A Bug's Life because Bug's Life came out when I was in 6th grade. I remember that. And I think I was just leaving high school around the time of The Incredibles, and I really wouldn't be watching Pixar unless my family went to the theaters as like a trip. Like I have a great aunt, not well, she's my aunt, but I think she's great. That's what I mean. Who loves Disney, and she would even without she had children of her own, but all her children were older than me. So they kind of missed it. And she didn't have grandchildren at the time. She has now. But she loved Disney. And she would, like, if we all felt like going to a Pixar film, even if we were over the age demographic, we'd go. So, but I never did. I never saw The Incredibles. I know I would see it with her and my uncle, had I been there at the time. So I never got the chance. But people say it's amazing. So I agree. No spoilers. I don't know what happens. Exploring Finn says, I agree, but the way he's building business is almost cooler than his stories. Yeah, and actually, excuse me, Prof and I were just talking about that. Like, there are two reasons why he's going to be very successful with his stories. And actually, neither of those reasons has to do with his writing until he practices. I have no idea what his books are about. I think it was like, what's his name? What's his name? Literature Devil. His video on the Ripperverse came into my feed, and I was kind of curious what he said. And he's totally honest with his critique of at least the first Isom story. But where Eric July is going to be successful is his absolute business savvy, his marketing savvy. There's no question. He knows business. He's probably I'm just judging it from a distance, but I can imagine he is just a degree more, maybe not experienced, but he's just a degree more masterful in business and marketing than he is even as an artist, even though he's done writing and he's done music. I haven't heard his music, so I probably should listen to his music just to see where he is at, because he was like, wasn't he in a band and touring? Like, wasn't he in some metal band or something like that? So I haven't heard his music, but he's just so business minded. So that's the first thing. The second thing is because he's business minded and he wants longevity with his company, he's hiring people to do all this stuff. He's not taking it all on his own. He's not thinking he's going to be the artist of his stories, and he's not even the writer. Like, he's hiring pro writers who've done the comic scene for decades. He's hiring them to do other stories. That's where the longevity is gonna come. Had he just done it by himself, like, even with his massive loyal following, he wouldn't I don't suspect he would have the years of success as he will be having because of his business mind. He has an artistic mind. And he's a visionary, no question. He's got a goal, and we can all see it, and we're all excited for it. But his success is going to become, it's going to lie in his loyal following, and also because he's hired pro writers. So let's see. Um, I hear my voice in the kitchen, and it's delayed. All right. Uh, let's continue on. Let's see. Do. Ghost Planet is wishing everyone an almost Thanksgiving. Yeah, I think it will be good. I love Thanksgiving, and I've been giving my students some short melodies for Thanksgiving. Welcome, someone named Bob. Good to have you here. Busy at work, but let the record state that I was here. You were here, and I said it. It exists. It's a fact. Oh, I know why I hear me. Now I hear me less. All right, so it wasn't in the kitchen. All right, so let's continue on. Stunning and brave Megatron, who is a dude, says, yes, it's kind of like finding your style as an artist, which is a slippery slope because your style will always be changing. My art now looks nothing like what I drew during high school. Oh my gosh, you actually raise a really, really good point. And I gotta stop for a second. Hopefully, I have my train of thought, but I hear me and it's super distracting. 1 second. All right. So, thank you. I just had to step away for a second. So you make a point, Megatron, that style it's actually not a slippery slope. It's just evolution of your artistic style. So you say your style will be changing, and so your art now looks nothing like when you drew in high school, and that's absolutely true, especially after years. There are a couple things about that. So you're right. Your signature and your style with development is always going to change, and if you're doing it right, it's going to change for the better. That's the first thing. The second thing is your self in the future is going to pick up on things you right now won't be able to hear or see. This is especially true with my experience in music composition. So I released actually, I'm remastering a single track called Frost. I have it still on my website. It's about 8 minutes and 48 seconds. And just frankly speaking, it was just too long. It was like at least 2.5 minutes too long. And I decided, and my sister, she actually brought it up. She's like, I like the sound of your track Frost, but it's just too long. I'm like, yeah, I knew that already. And so what I decided to do, I'm going to release it this month, November, because it's called Frost and it's nice and cold and stuff like that. But what I'm going to do, or what I've already done, is I've shaved like 3.5 minutes of it already, and I love the structure so much better. But even more than that, like even back then when I released it, I was like, yeah, I released it like February of 2020. I knew it was too long, but then now I'm hearing things of that old track that I just did not hear, even though it had been professionally mastered by someone else. And it's not him, it was my instrument. I hear things I just would not do now. I'm like, oh no, 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 that's not the sound I want. And I didn't hear it though. physically and orally, I did not hear that in my past. Like past me 3 or 4 years ago did not hear what me now hears. And so that's also an encouragement of developing your craft is that like 5 years from now, you're going to see and understand and discover things and tweak things that you right now cannot comprehend. That's the beauty of development. And so that's on top of your style changing. Your style's gonna change because you maybe as a person will change, but you will be always improving. And maybe it's still the same style as you had 5 years before, 10 years before, but just with much better detail and personally unique aesthetics in any art form, music, visual art, whatever. And that's kind of exciting. Like people say, "Oh, I don't want to get older and stuff like that." Yeah, like I still want to stay young forever. Yeah, who doesn't? Well, I don't know. That's a philosophical thing. I'm we all get old, right? But something I look forward to, if I am here in my 50s, something that I'm really looking forward to is like, oh my gosh, where is my music going to be when I'm 50? Where is my writing science fiction going to be when I'm 50? Because it's going to be by the time that's going to be a little over 10 years from now, about 13, 14 years from now. And if I still keep at it with my craft, it's always gonna be better, you're never gonna stagnate. That's hugely encouraging. I don't know. I get excited about that kind of thing. But, yeah, we'll see. My goodness, thank you, Studio Super. You are so terrific. I appreciate and I think you were saying too, like, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you had well, and if you don't wanna correct me, that's fine too, but, like, it sounds like you have had really supportive, family members with your art, so that is wonderful. And actually, let's see, I wanna and Studio Super, if you have, like, a YouTube channel, just let us know, because 'cause we'd like to see your development in art or if you have a website as well. But you bring up the point, thank you so much for the super chat, with folks trying to modify I feel like we're gonna go to the Jetsons future where the only skilled people need to master is button pushing. Oh my gosh. I didn't really realize that as a kid when I saw that cartoon, where the mere button pushing exhaust I do remember that. I do remember that. Where yeah, yeah. I remember that's so funny. Well, yeah, I want to write a short story about that, at least with AI art, or at least art in like, yeah, not everything needs to be automated, for goodness sake. Like, not everything needs to be machine automated for sure. I do remember seeing a scene in the Jetsons when I was a kid where he's waking up and and his morning routine is to exercise, but it's to see himself exercise. So like it's a picture of him jump roping, and he's actually already breaking a sweat when his head is still on the pillow and he's still under the covers. And I was like, and that really shocked me as a kid. I laughed. I thought that was the funniest concept. But this was before the internet. Like I was, the internet didn't. Well, it existed in a way, but in a very like it was so you did not go to the internet as a kid. Like AOL.com was the only thing I vaguely remembered, but I mean, the internet when I was a kid was only for school libraries, like Netscape Navigator. We didn't the internet was not our pastime. It was our pastime was other stuff. So that was pre-internet times when I was watching the Jetsons as a kid, and now it's like, yeah, we don't I think it was Brian or someone else who made the point, actually probably all of you to some effect, made the point in your chat saying we don't like struggle. And struggle is not something we like. And this is kind of what drives me crazy about the entrepreneur movement. It's like you got to take the path of most resistance and stuff like that. But the reason why they say that to you is like you want to achieve the massive success. You gotta do all the stuff that makes you uncomfortable, and it's like, and then you'll achieve wealth, and then you'll achieve influence, and then you'll achieve power and stuff like that. They don't say it that extreme, but they kind of say that. And what they say, what they're trying to promise you, what they're trying to promise their readers and their listeners that, listeners of their podcast or whatever, and I don't listen to their podcast. I just listen to like a commentary of theirs or whatever, in another context, even less and less nowadays, especially not. I used to listen to them all the time as a like 4 or 5 years ago. Anyway, my point is they they're trying to promise you like an easy life of success, and it doesn't even have to be something literal like passive income. They're just trying to say, like, you got to build wealth, you got to do all this stuff so you don't have to struggle. And it's like struggling always will be a part of human life, and we experience struggle in different ways. Like there will be battles I will never face that other people face. There will be battles that people will never face that I face. It's just part of human life. And then if we find joy, constant joy, even in the hard times, and hard times are not going to be every day. It might not even be every year, but we, in some way, we do face hard times. And I think that's where people are a little bit attracted at Studio Super, as you say, to the AI, is because people, if you haven't been noticing, people really are attracted to the completely automated lifestyle. Like even like self-driven cars, I've never been a fan of that. It's like, what's wrong with just driving by yourself? Like just be in a car and drive a car. What's wrong with that? Like, I'm not saying you shouldn't invent self-driven cars, but like it's interesting as a novelty or a concept, but like I like being behind the wheel. I love long road trips. I like driving. I know a lot of people don't like driving. I understand that. But yeah, not everything needs to be automated. Like let's go to the ludicrous level and say like the Jetsons, like they change, like robots change your clothes for you. Like you're on this treadmill and then you go behind this, this partition, and then you come out fully dressed. It's like so silly. And Megatron says Incredibles as your second favorite Disney Pixar film, right next to Lilo and Stitch and Mulan. Mulan is always great. I absolutely love Mulan. Well, the 90s Mulan. It like her story was my favorite. I love my favorite princess, if we're talking about princesses, is Belle. And I know people kind of harp on, and like they kind of harangue on the idea like, oh, like Disney started the female empowerment with the princesses, like lack of mother and absentee father or whatever like that. Yeah, I get it. I get it. But I still like Beauty and the Beast. But as a kid, my ultimate favorite film was Mulan. I was obsessed with that story, and I still am in some way. That film resonates with me, like even thinking about it. Love it. Megatron says, "Everyone dies in The Incredibles. Sorry." Yeah, no spoilers, guys. Thank you, Studio Super. I totally appreciate that. Uh, and again, if you have a website we can go to, just let us know. Let me I don't, can I make you a mod? I don't I don't think I can make it. Well, I'll have to look for it. I can't see it right now. But anyway, you say folks shouldn't pursue entrepreneurship for the pursuit of fame. Exactly right. You're correct about that. But for the pursuit of creative freedom, yes, I do agree with you there. For me, my struggle is time management between my full time job and my art and your art. It's a skill to master. Yeah, I do pursue. You're right. I do pursue creative freedom. Where I think I'm seeing again, I just don't watch as much entrepreneur videos as I used to, and the reason is I've been applying everything they've been telling me, and so it's stuff I already know, and they really there it's a sad fact, and they won't tell you. They won't tell you outright. And again, I only watch like one video, like one podcast who invites guests, so that's how I like know so much. Um, they really home in on the beginner. What I mean by that is like someone who just hasn't started yet, or maybe who's afraid to start. who hasn't worked it for a year or 2 or 5. And I like the idea of creative freedom. Um, Again, I'm very happy with my vocation as a music teacher. And if it got well, and actually, I'd still like to expand on that in the future. In fact, in the near future, I'd like to create a business with my music teaching because I realize my time is so limited, and a lot of people want to. I'm really blessed. I'm grateful, but I'm in an area where parents are really dedicated to get their kids into music, and they ask me, "Hey, can you do Thursdays? Can you do Saturdays? Can you do these days?" And I really am not available. And so I thought, well, you know what? I need to actually build a business, like an online music business where, the demand for violin instruction and piano instruction, just music instruction in general. I'll start with violin before I branch out to any other thing, but and I'm not a pianist. I'm a master violinist. The demand is there, like, for kids and adults. And so building a business, I know will take years, but you're right, it will actually allow me to have a lot more creative freedom than I already have. So I do like that touch of entrepreneurship, um, where people, I think, just fall away. They fell away during the pandemic. There was a huge falling away of people listening to this kind of stuff during the pandemic because, like, well, I gotta keep my job, I gotta fight for my job, and that makes sense, like, you're on kind of survival mode or whatever, but a lot of people lost interest in working hard on whatever their craft, their business, and then now it's sprung back up now that life is more or less normal, but the entrepreneurs, they know this, they I think it was David Stewart who made this really good point, and I've known this for years now, but it was good to hear from another person. They people who make their money writing books make way, way, way more money writing on how to write a book and how to publish a book than they do making money writing their own books, if that makes sense. He said it in a better way, but it's so true. It's like you would make so much more money writing nonfiction on how to have a better mindset with your art than actually, like, the history of art, for instance, or your own process. Like, your own artistic process is not as attractive as saying, well, you got to have a positive mindset, and here are these 5 ways to keep you having a positive mindset. And I'm not saying these ways aren't pointless to learn. I actually, yeah, learn how to be disciplined, but once you close, and I'm not saying this of you, Studio Super, I'm saying this of the general population who listens to these videos. They love listening to the videos. They love reading those books. But when it actually comes to practicing their craft, I don't see any indication. I try to look these people up. Like, yeah, you motivated me, and I'm gonna, like 4 months ago, like, there'll be a comment 4 months. I'm like, I'm gonna put up a video this month, and then nothing. And so it's like this kind of dopamine, like, yeah, I know this is right to hear. It's like, yeah, it's right to hear, and then it's right to practice. True too. Anyway, yeah. Ghost Plant says Disney's the 30s Snow White. Yep, that's a really good tale too. Private Eye says your favorite princess is Ariel. Yeah, she's she's kind of a rebel though. Like she learns. She learns. Um, oh, anyway, I had another thought. I'm like, man, I probably shouldn't say it out loud. No, it's a good story. I think it's a really good story. And the true Prince Eric, he saves the day. You know, stop with the remakes where, like, the prince can't save the day. For goodness sake, oh my gosh, stop it. Chihuahua, you say, how dare you tell me to practice to get better? It feels good though. Like, there's something, like, it would be like 45 minutes practicing the violin, and it feels like a workout. It's like, oh, that feels so good. It feels so good. All right. What time is it? Oh, it's close to 7. I think I said what I needed to say as far as the artistic struggle. It really did stem out of contenders. People, I it, it's an it tends to happen with highly debatable topics and controversy, not controversy, but yeah, of course, controversy. A lot of people say, oh, excuse me 1 second. As soon as like AI or something like AI becomes a hot topic, then there's going to be extreme sides, and I don't, I always want to be the neutral side, but a lot of people who really jumped on AI and said, this is the future, guys, deal with it. A lot of people who I saw it. They were really resentful of actual artists getting angry. And it's like, well, you know what? The anger is justified. Now, don't be mean about it. Like, if you're an angry artist and who hates the idea of AI, don't be vicious about it. Absolutely not. But it's like, first of all, you have the right to be angry about something. You have the right to be upset about something. And just because you're upset about something does not mean you're a hater. It's like these people are anti-A. They hate AI art. They're haters. They're anti-AIers. And again, I don't want to pick on people, but like the response was, okay, I'll say it this way. I actually saw responses, like 1 or 2 times I saw people hate the idea of artistic struggle. They didn't like it. They had a really they had a hard time with artists struggling to get better, and professional artists being really good at what they do. And their argument against the struggle was, well, these people developed this new tool for us, so it's better for us. They wouldn't say it outright, but they said they basically said they struggled, these developers of AI and these artists before AI struggled, so we don't have to. It's like that's not a good frame of mind to have. Let's just say, like, art will always be a struggle. That's what makes it special. And a lot of people who had a hard time with that is like, it's like, I'm sorry, you gotta practice. And practice actually involves facing your own insecurities. It does. You if you make it an effort, if you make it part of your routine to daily practice your craft, you will inevitably run into either insecurity or frustration, or maybe both. You'll be frustrated that you're slow at something. That's just part of it. And people hate that. Like, my students hate the time it takes to get the tone of the violin or the technique of the violin. They don't like it. It's an uphill battle for them. I see it every day when I teach. And the same is true for artists who or people who want to pursue art, but they want to take all the shortcuts. Just remember, AI artists or people who want to pursue AI art or whatever follows in that line of thinking, you are a modifier. You are an art director. You are commissioner. You're telling the artist what to do. You're not making the composition itself. And I would say self-esteem, even if you're on the beginning and intermediate levels, intermediate, I meant to say. I think I said that. Intermediate. Beginning and intermediate levels, even if you're in in those levels or on those levels, I'm not using the preposition correctly. Because it's getting late. You will be building your self-esteem. Like, your improvement of your own self-esteem will happen with effort. And I'm not sure why people want to take the shortcut. And at the very least, those who do not practice their craft, like actually put in the blood, sweat, and tears and toil, even not literally, but just treat your art like a farm, treat your art like a field. It takes time. Those who take the shortcuts will find that the trend will die. The AI art trend will die. It's not going to last forever. Just like NFTs aren't going to last forever. Even no one's talking about NFTs now. I'm not on Twitter anymore, but who talks about NFTs anymore? No one. AI art will be the same. It might be a little bit longer. It might have a longer lifespan, but it's just a trend. As soon as it becomes obsolete or hard to work with, like, AI artists are limited to the limitations of that software. Sorry, that's a fact. So if updates suck, If things become hard to work with, if things become obsolete, your own skill will be obsolete with it. That's the danger. That's the dangerous thing. Where was I going with that? I'm on a rant, so I lost my train of thought. um, anyway, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, but look, like the trend will die, and the artists who like if the AI goes away with art, the artists are still gonna be doing what they're doing, whether with the rise of AI art or the fall of it. Like the artist will still be doing what they're doing, and that's all I have to say. So, in any case, let me just finish out these comments and then wrap it up. Samuel Proctor says, Prince Eric is the chaddest of the Chad Disney princes, steering a wrecked ship um, to impale a giant octopus goddess. Yeah. Like, how would you do that too? Like, that would create a lot of force. And I remember being a kid just hating that scene because, like, I'm a visceral person. Like, if someone, if some character dies a violent death, like, this is why I don't watch horror or anything because, like, I think it was like Patriot Games where the bad guy in the end was impaled. I'm like, ooh, 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 that would suck. Oh, ah. Anyway, don't think I have felt the same way though with Shan Yu when he goes into the fireworks display or fireworks setup. All right. So, thank you guys so much for listening. We'll probably talk about more art stuff in the future. I kind of want, let's see, let's actually talk about what's on the dock. Yeah, I do want to catch up with you guys on this. Uh, the first thing I want to say is that I, I set a poll, I think earlier this week on, on music videos. What do you want to hear first? Whether you want to see drum loops and how I do drum loops in Logic Pro, or also I was like, what is that? That's a plane behind me. Okay. um, Drum loops in Logic Pro or SuperCollider, which actually SuperCollider, I got to work at it, but I think I found a breakthrough with SuperCollider, which is really exciting. It's just going to take some troubleshooting. Well, the votes were in, and the poll is still up. So unless some more people say SuperCollider first, I'm going to do Logic Pro first. I'm very happy. I just like I wanted to do that video earlier this week, but OBS was an absolute pain in the rear to troubleshoot with my new computer. It took me a good few days to figure out what the problem was. So that is all set up. Now I can do extra content on YouTube with my Logic Pro and my SuperCollider and any music thing that I work on. So I would say I'm going to definitely start recording that video probably Wednesday night. And so I'd like to post it maybe Friday or Saturday, maybe even earlier, depending on the editing involved. And then I'll go into SuperCollider into the next week because I think it's pretty important. As well as some other stuff, just some 1 to 2 minute videos on very short but very handy things to work on with things like MuseScore, which is a notation software that I work in for my students. So there will be content. I will have more content. And I was saying, Gigawatt says, hurry up and watch. Wait, where were you? Hurry up and watch Farscape. I'm like, well, we're still doing Stargate, man. We still got like, what is it, like 6.5 seasons left? So I know, I watch TV so slowly. Thank you, Studio Super. Your favorite is Esmeralda, from Hunchback of Notre Dame. Very capable, but that won me over, showing her kindness and friendship to someone who never knew any of that. Absolutely. Absolutely. I should watch that movie again. It's been years. Thank you again for the super chat. Yeah, just I want to see. Let's see. I can't, man. It's not letting me make you a mod for some reason. So that's unfortunate. Maybe I'll try to find a way. But at the very least, again, if you have a place where we can see your art, just let us know. You're just so wonderfully supportive of Prof and me, and we definitely appreciate you. Yeah, very, very much. Thank you so much for your support. That was the first thing I was going to say. So yes, more content, more YouTube content. I'm so excited to be getting back into YouTube content. Maybe next stream, unless I have a different idea about art making and stuff like that. I was thinking about talking a little bit about what would I say? science fiction, but not really science fiction, like even if you don't have an interest in science fiction, I want to talk about like there will be a rant about people just really getting so on the nose opinionated about what science fiction should look like. And I'll just give you a very specific example that I would dive into, and that is space wars and Star Wars. Like people just talking about saying that's not how space flight would work, and Star Wars is silly to be barreling fighters in space because you're making fighters look like they would be under the atmosphere. I'm like, okay, we got to talk about that because sorry, science fiction is not hard science all the time. And so we're going to discuss that because a lot of science fiction fans are kind of a breed I'm starting to discover. And I'm not in a bad way, but like we need to have some, I would say, more flexible expectations of what sci-fi is. And we might talk about fantasy as well. I don't really read fantasy, but if you guys read and watch fantasy, you might enjoy the stream I have in mind because, yes, space fighters can barrel in space. And I know a lot of readers have a problem with that, but we've culturally accepted with Star Wars that space fighters can do that. And you don't need to explain it. You don't need to come up with a science to talk about that. Space wars in real life would be boring, and we all need to understand that. So, anyway, I still love science fiction, I can say that. Oh, yes, Big Al, before we, get off the stream here, yes, Dark Stars, yes, he did give me this book, and I have it on my, I do have it on my, bookshelf there, so aw. You know, we'll talk about that. We're gonna be talking about that on another stream because yeah, we gotta talk about it. We gotta be honest about this. We gotta be intellectually honest. But thank you so much for the super chats. Really do appreciate you. Um, gigawatt. Yes, exactly. I know. I'm gonna be fair in my opinions, but it is my channel, so I can be opinionated on my own channel. But yeah, um, let's talk about that next stream. I think it'll be a fun discussion. And even if you're not a sci-fi reader, you like people do if you like Star Wars and Star Trek and all sorts of that kind of stuff, you're gonna probably like the stream. So anyway, let's talk about that next time. And until I see you next, always keep producing, preserving, and promoting that good art that you love. And just take care. And I'll see you soon.